Okay. And we are live. And
Yay.
it's working. All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Ireda Grable, and I'm the director and trainer at Language Liaisons. For those of you that don't know what Language Liaisons is, we are a language services agency that focuses on providing qualified and certified interpreting services, and we can do that on site, online, or telephonically. We also provide translation services, language training, and interpreting training as well. And we are just so excited to be able to connect with you in this way. This is our second episode of Open to Interpretation. Our first one was last month with expert translator Dorothy Evans. So if you didn't get to watch that one, you may want to catch it after this. Thank you so much for the response to that episode. We did not think that we were going to have such a great outcome. And it was just so nice to see everyone that was so interested in the topics that we were wanting to discuss and just to see your engagement. So thank you very much if you're watching now or if you're watching this later. Thank you again. And so today, without further ado, we have our second episode of Open to Interpretation, and we have a very special guest today. We have recently started working with Elle Hammond directly, but we have had a partnership with the organization that she represents for a few years, and so we're excited to have her with us. Prior to becoming the state coordinator for the DMRC, the Delaware Medical Reserve Corps, she worked in healthcare for about 6 years, specializing in women's health. She has had extensive volunteer experience, including full-time missionary work, international volunteering, and leadership assignments. And she has trained groups on how to volunteer, groups as small as 2 up to a few hundred. So we are very excited to be discussing the topic of training with Elle today. Hi, Elle, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. And happy birthday to Language Liaisons.
Oh,
16 years, right? That's
yes,
so
thank
exciting. What
you.
an accomplishment for you guys.
Yes, thank you so much. At the end of our interview, I will say a little bit about how you can get involved in celebrating because we've had to come up with a new way to celebrate this year, given everything that's going on. But thank you so much, Elle. So let's just jump right in. Why don't you first tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you get to Delaware?
Well, I am an East Coast girl by birth. My family has been anywhere from Pennsylvania to Maryland, but I had been living in the Midwest for about 10 years. Um, and then decided to come back. All my family's out here. I didn't want to use my travel money to always come to see family. I wanted to get to see other places too. So it's nice to be closer to family, but still with that little bit of distance so I can do my own thing. But yeah, I love being back here. Water like soothes my soul. So it's good to be so close after being landlocked. And like you mentioned, volunteering has been a big part of my life. And so it's fun to get to do it professionally right now. So
Wonderful, wonderful. And so you started working with the DMRC and with the state of Delaware shortly after the pandemic started. Is that correct?
just before,
Oh,
yeah,
just before. Okay.
yeah,
So at least you had a little bit of a of an introduction to Delaware
yeah,
before everything just kind of was turned upside down.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, great, great. So tell me a little bit about coming from that preparedness angle, right? Why do you think training is so important, especially in light of everything that's going on right now?
Well, as we have all seen with COVID, when something big happens, your time to prepare is over, right? There's only so much you can learn in an instant. And so you really have to rely on everything that you have learned previously um, to try to help you in that moment. No one would want to walk into an operating room and have their doctor be reading instructions on how to do the surgery right then. That would be crazy. So why do we think it's any different with being ready for emergencies or disasters? Like you have to have some of that preparation to happen to fully be able to respond and react well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well said. And how has training yourself or your team helped you in a specific instance? And, thinking about what the outcome could have been if you had not acquired that training. Maybe you have a specific story or something you'd like to share about that.
Yeah, so training is kind of like muscle memory when you work out and exercise. It's there for you when you need it. Um, One of the things that the DMRC has been doing recently is helping with first aid stations at these big food bank mobile pantry events. It's a great partnership. Um, but as we all remember, some of this summer was grossly hot, right? You're outside, it's like 100 degrees, 200% humidity. And there were times when those volunteers needed to know what to do with heat exhaustion. And
Mm.
so it's been great that not a skill that they were particularly using on a regular basis, but they had that training. And so they were able to help people at these events. And so it's just incredible because if they hadn't had that training, we don't know what would have happened to those people. They would have gotten help, right? Paramedics still exist. Resources still could have come, but it would have been a delayed and probably a worse reaction than having them right there on hand to be able to use that training. So it makes a big difference in time. And it's not always medical things either. If you have a hurricane that you have to evacuate for, not, too far off from our memories of a few weeks ago with Isaias, if you
Mhm.
know you have to evacuate and you have a go kit ready, which is one of the things that we train on, you can grab it, you can go, you have the essentials, and that's there for you. And if you don't have that preparation, you can get supplies later maybe, but I don't know about you, but I like to be able to brush my teeth at the end of the night.
Yes, definitely, definitely. And sometimes people can have mixed feelings about being prepared for like worst case scenarios, right? It's like, are you just being a pessimist, right? Like you're just, prepared for anything to go wrong. Well, I guess there's a balance there, right? You don't want to always be imagining yourself in like worst case scenario situations. But like you said, being ready, just being prepared so that if something was to happen, at least you have those essentials and at least you can have something to kind of give you comfort, right? That at least I have this and I have this ready and I know what to do with my family, for example.
Mhm.
Because there's just so many emotions that will come at once when you're actually in the event, right? So
Right.
being ready beforehand is critical. Um, and so in the state of Delaware, we're incredibly fortunate to have a very proactive team when it comes to preparedness. One of the things that, as you oversee the Medical Reserve Corps, can you tell me a little bit about what does the Delaware Medical Reserve Corps actually do for our community, especially during times like these and times where we do have state emergencies?
So coming in from the Midwest, I had not heard of the Delaware Medical Reserve Corps. And I got here and I found this position, and I am just blown away by all the things that these volunteers can do. It is a privilege to work with them. So, being a volunteer organization, but housed in public health, there's so many things for readiness and emergency response that the volunteers do on a regular basis. Everything from teaching about preparedness, setting up those go kits, what to do, to coming up, we're going to have flu vaccine. They're called points of dispensing pods or clinics in the fall. So helping provide that access to all Delawareans to if there is an emergency response. There were people that lost power and that their housing was flooded after the tornado and hurricane that we had. And so they could set up a shelter so people had someplace safe to go. And that's one of the things that we train for regularly, being able to do that. We are coastal, and so the possibility of that is a regular occurrence. And so to have volunteers that know how to help people in those situations, not just physically on the running of the shelter, but also mentally and emotionally. That's a component of what the team can do, is a huge resource for the state. And every day, I'm blown away by the volunteers and the ways that they just want to help people be healthy and successful and prepared. It's incredible.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And so, do you guys ever have like an off season? Like, what do you do if there is no hurricane or if there is no, pandemic, right? Like, what do you do in the meantime?
Um, I hopefully will get to let you know when we get out of the pandemic because my whole job has been an on season. Um,
I
but there's always training that is happening because you need to be ready for when the next thing comes. One of the beautiful things that has actually happened with COVID is we have seen over 400 people sign up to volunteer with the DMRC just since this all started. Delaware is full of incredible people that are just wanting to help out, but they're also very new. And so they will need some of the training that our volunteers that have been around for years have had to be ready to help in all of those circumstances. Some of the more medical things we do require regular updating of skills. And so, like right now, we're getting ready for immunization training. And so there's never, we have hurricane season basically all summer, and then we have flu and cold season. You never know when another disaster is going to happen. So never really an off season. We have some seasons where we're less worried about environmental impacts like hurricanes. And that's when we try to catch up on everything else.
Good, 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 good. And continue to train. Good. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that as well. Now, have you worked with an interpreter directly while responding to a disaster?
Yes. Interpreters are just amazing. Let's be honest. What you do is incredible. In this disaster, we have had especially Spanish and Haitian Creole interpreters that have helped at our community testing events, at some of the shelters and housing situations that we've had going on. And it just makes such a huge difference, right? Those people are already in a vulnerable state because of whatever the situation is. They're worried about being sick. They're worried about getting their family member sick. They're worried about their housing, whatever it is that led them to have contact with public health. And to have someone that they feel like truly understands them, not just like can get by, it makes a huge difference. And so seeing people soften and open up and truly let you know what's going on so that you can help them, so that you can help make that hard situation a little bit better. It's just an incredible experience.
Yes, and there is a difference between like what you said, trying to get by, trying to connect with someone, which I understand that when you're in that situation, maybe you are the person that's affected by the disaster. Anything is better than nothing, right? But definitely having an interpreter, like you said, especially one that is trained, that understands how to respect your boundaries, that understands how to engage in this communication exchange that's happening, that is helping you also, not just with the language barriers, but maybe potentially even cultural barriers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would think that that would make your job so much easier. What are some of the first kind of maybe it's interviews, maybe it's assessment. What are some of the ways that you would utilize an interpreter when you go into the communities, either before a large, flu clinic or after a major disaster? How would you best utilize an interpreter?
There are so many different ways that we can utilize interpreters. One of the things that I've noticed is that the idea of preparedness is kind of an American thing in the way that we prepare and expect people to prepare for things. And so because there is somewhat of a cultural difference there, even helping them understand, like, what is a 72-hour kit? I know I have a lot of friends from other countries that are like, what are you talking about, right? That's not a concept that's familiar to them. And so that teaching aspect is huge from the start. Like we've said, training has to happen beforehand. And so that teaching that can help the community is one of the ways that we can utilize interpreters. And then as we go into the more high risk, bigger scale situations of the clinics and the shelters, having an interpreter just keeps everyone safe, because the person that needs the language translation interpretation needs accurate information, right? If they don't know kind of the guidelines or what's going on, like, you don't have a good way to keep them safe. But then also, when we do our more medical stuff like vaccines, you need to know if people have allergies. You need to know if it's a series of shots, if they've had one or two of them before. These things are critical. And if you don't have someone that will be accurate in those situations, it's not just about being buddy-buddy. If you have someone that's true to the intent of the conversation on both sides, you can keep them physically safe, you can help keep them emotionally safe. It just makes such a huge difference. And so we, especially as we're getting ready to gear up for that season, having people ready to help the community in those capacities is forefront on our minds and our preparation.
Definitely. You covered so many great points with that answer. I mean, accuracy is one of our national code of ethics, right? So we have 9 of them, and one of them is accuracy. And so we really train interpreters in understanding that we don't omit, we don't add anything to the messages, we don't change them or paraphrase them. We really try to be as true and honest and faithful to the messages that are being exchanged as possible, understanding that there are cultural differences, that, maybe an innuendo or something, may not necessarily translate well, or that, but, that accuracy really is one of the goals with every encounter. And so I also have a connection with an organization that does what you do, Elle, but at a national and international level. It's called Convoy of Hope. And I remember talking to them about interpretation services and their experience in saying, there's just so much emotion already going on. What we need the interpreters to do is to help us to gather all the information, all the facts that we need, so that then we can go back, complete these assessments and these reports and all that, and be able to then help people, in the best way possible. And if you end up having an interpreter that, becomes a buddy versus actually focusing on what you need and what these people need, then really you can end up with one big mess, right? The interpreter could actually make things worse. And like you said, you can even be putting someone's safety at risk. So thank you so much for talking about that. Also, can you talk a little bit about how you've maybe worked with some of the ASL interpreters and how you also seek to serve the deaf and hard of hearing community in the state?
So COVID and just this role has really opened my eyes to the situation and the kind of the overall status of the deaf community in Delaware. We have a lot of deaf fellow community members, and not a lot of interpretation services for them. We try our best. One of the things that I've loved watching is my team making sure to get interpretation services, like for the governor's briefings. But with those few interpreters, what happens when we have an emergency or a disaster? They can't be in all the places at once. Some of them cover more than just Delaware. And it makes my heart hurt to think of someone coming into like a shelter, for example, and not being able to communicate with anyone, because it increases that fear factor. It just increases the stress level. And so it is very important to the DMRC to try to find more people that can sign ASL that are also hearing, so that we are ready and have them trained should an event arise. Obviously, we're hoping that nothing else happens, right? In a perfect world, we never have another tornado, whatever we have going on, right? But life happens. And so, especially the way 2020 is going, we need to be ready for when it does. And so we're definitely trying to find those people because we know they're out there, right? Look at all the volunteers we've had sign up for the DMRC in general. We know there's good people out there that want to help. We're just trying to find them and connect them to this training and to us so that anyone that is in need has access to it. We sometimes take for granted that we can express ourselves and ask people for what we want and tell people what we need. But if that's not the case, life is just a lot scarier. And if it's already in an emergency or disaster, that's so challenging. So that's definitely one of our things that we're working on. Trying to tap into that has been challenging with COVID, but we'll get there. We're working on it. We already have some progress going. So, and it's important to the Division of Public Health too. And so that helps. I feel really supported in that, which is awesome. It's, you know, you don't always have a job where things that are important to you personally then play out professionally. And so it's nice to be backed that they see the need and want to help.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I've had that experience myself. I lived in India for 2 years, and within my first couple of days in North India, I had to go to the hospital because I had a terrible infection or something in my intestines from something that I had eaten. And I just remember walking into the hospital and not even knowing how to say yes or no in Hindi. And what that felt like if it wasn't because I had a really close friend, you know, from the team that I was working with, and then somebody else that came that could work as an interpreter for us, I don't know what I would have done. And every time that I met someone that worked at the hospital that actually spoke even just a few English words, to me, that was like such a breath of air. It was like, oh my goodness, can you tell me what's going on? Like, I don't know what's happening. I don't even know what's going into my IV right now. Right. And so I can relate. And that was something that happened to me way before my journey with language liaisons. But so interesting, right, that we've had those experiences, and like you said, it was a personal conviction, but then actually being able to play that out professionally it's been amazing to be a part of this. And we're just so grateful to the state of Delaware because, like I mentioned earlier, it our partnership with your office and your division, I have seen just how much they actually care. Like, this is not just another program. And the fact that all of these training events that you're mentioning, they are, and correct me if I'm wrong, but all of them are free, right? They are at no cost to the participants. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Right. So you're being equipped with all of this knowledge. You're being offered training that could cost hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, all at no cost, so that you can be a part of those people that want to help when there is an opportunity to help. And so that you can do it not just because you're compassionate and loving and caring, but also because you're prepared to do it, right? Also because you're trained to do it. And so we are just so grateful to be partnering with you. One of the efforts that the DMRC has going on right now is that we do have training, the 40-hour training program that is required for interpreters to be qualified community interpreters, and for you to begin working as a qualified interpreter in your community. The state is offering, right? They are sponsoring that, and they have done that for many years through language liaisons. And we're so grateful to see that, because we see even some of our interpreters actually have come out of those training opportunities, and we see them when there is an emergency. We see that some of our interpreters are saying, yes, I'm there, like I'm ready to serve, right?
Yeah.
Because of this connection that we have with you. So again, just so important. And is there anything else that you'd like to say, Elle, as we're wrapping up here, just about the importance of training, the importance of really staying within your role as you're interpreting, or as you are, you know, whatever your role may be when responding? Is there anything you'd like to tell your volunteers here, and just in conclusion?
Telling my volunteers, I can't tell them enough that they're amazing, right? I have seen so many people step up and do insanely challenging and noble things during this response. And a lot of it they can do because of their previous training and preparation, and that's amazing. They bring so much to the table, and then to be able to give it back to their community at no cost is incredible. I am thankful for this partnership because I've seen firsthand what happens if you don't have good interpreters. I remember once working in the hospital, I walked into a patient's room. I knew going in that the patient only spoke another language. That patient didn't know that I also spoke that language, right? And I walked in, and the patient fully expected to kind of like mime and point and get by. And I started speaking to them in their language, and it was just entirely different. And so my relationship with that patient was different than their relationship with any of the other staff, because they couldn't have that connection. And it just makes such a difference. So having good interpreters really is life-changing. So what you do is so incredible. So thank you. I love this opportunity to help people be ready so that when the hard things come, they're not as scary and they're not as overwhelming. So
Yes. Great. Thank you so much, Ellen. Thank you for giving us some of your time. Elle has been incredibly busy, as you can imagine, dealing with everything, literally everything that's been going on in our state, everything from the pandemic to the tornado to the hurricane. I mean, just all things. And so we just want to say thank you for taking a few minutes out of your busy schedule to come and talk to us about this, because it's important, and more people need to know about it. And like Elle said, we do have a training session coming up. It'll be starting at the end of September, and we also have another one in October. And also the great thing that I'm seeing too with this partnership is that, yes, if you already have taken your 40-hour training through the state and you have that, then you may say, okay, well, I already have that. Now what? Well, they are also, because they're so proactive and so amazing, they also do sponsor a more intermediate to advanced workshop that happens at least once a year, sometimes twice a year, depending on, world issues like the pandemic. But we do have an intermediate workshop, 2-day workshop coming up as well in October. So if you have any questions about training in general, about training through the state, or anything related to interpreting training, please feel free to contact us. You can do that in our website, languageliaisons.com. You can do that on social media, or you can give us a call. Our phones still work, 302-499-3030. And so, like Elle said at the beginning, we are turning 16. This is our big celebration month. And so for those of you that already follow us on social media or that are already affiliated with us, you've gotten the emails, you've gotten the notifications to visit us on our Instagram page so that you can be a part of the 16 days of giveaways. We have some really fun giveaways planned out. And so every other day we'll post a new giveaway, and the day after at 5 o'clock, we'll be announcing the winner. And we have things from like really cute t-shirts to gift cards to tickets to some of your favorite places here locally. So I want to make sure that you take advantage of that opportunity and that you come celebrate with us. Last year we were able to have a big party, and celebrate. This year it looks different, but it's still fun. So I hope that you take advantage of that. And next month we'll come back to you with another Open to Interpretation, episode 3. Thank you again for your support, for connecting, and for listening. And I hope you'll have a great day. Thank you, Elle.
thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. Have a good one.
Bye.